I'm Jason May.
I'm Becky May.
So we farm corn and soybeans in east central Minnesota. We farm around 1,500 acres, a lot of no-till, and it's getting into some strip-till practices just to try that out. Farm in a climate that's got a shorter growing season. We farm some wet, undrained soil that doesn't have drain tile, and we always seem to be able to get no-till working on our farm. So no-tilling corn is we have a wide variety of different soil types. So we'll generally start on a lighter soil type and then end up on the heavier ground after things warm up and dry out a bit. As far as stock residue management, we run a chopping Gernhoff corn head with stock stompers on it. We found that for no-till, it's better to have it all chopped down than to have it standing as a normal corn head. It just seems like it dries out faster. The stalks break down faster, and it's worked really well for us. So we use a roller quite a bit. A roller is like a main tool around here. Not so much on planting corn at all. On no-tilled ground, we don't use a roller, but anything in the beans, planting into corn stalks. We no-till, so there's not really a rock problem, but the problem is keeping the trash pushed down. So we don't run row cleaners on our planter because I don't care for them when things get wet. They just keep digging. So we run a coulter in front of the row unit. Prior to planting, we run the roller and roll the stalks down so they're flat on the ground. If we do get a situation where the field is wet and we can't plant, we'll run a Phoenix harrow through it, fluff all that stalk up. It doesn't do any really tillage, just fluffs the trash up. Then we run the roller over it a day later and plant right in it. And it's the most beautiful planting you've ever seen because it's just smooth. So we still got a residue on top. We didn't do any tillage. All we did was fluff the trash, let it dry out for a day, come back with the roller, roll it down. And we're talking a really wet spring, like abnormally wet, where a lot of people didn't get stuff planted. If we wouldn't have planted it that way, we would not have got it planted. So yes, there's some no-till attachments on here, but it's basically just a normal planter. You got a coulter, you got a single disc fertilizer opener, putting the fertilizer in. We added some mud scrapers to the gauge wheels this year, which was a lifesaver to keep the mud scraped off. Otherwise, they'd build up and start scraping and get into the seed disc. We run one spike wheel for the closing and never have a problem closing the trench. We usually just run it on one spring setting. We run a in-furrow system with a plastic rebounder to put pop-up fertilizer in the row for corn. And we add some fungicide and insecticide to that. We just run regular spring down pressure. It's got manual adjust. We don't have air adjust down pressure, although it would be nice. And like I said before, we have a set of row cleaners for this, but we don't care for them because you have to adjust them and keep them out of the mud, otherwise they dig. So we prefer the coulter. So basically this planter is the same planter we used to have. It's just got the attachments, the coulter, and the spike closing wheel. And even if you're not no-tilling, these spike closing wheels are the way to go. It keeps it from crusting if you get a heavy rain. One difference is we have single disc fertilizer where we had double disc before. But we still no-tilled with the old planter with double disc and no coulter, no spike closing wheel. We did it too, so we just keep adding a little bit to it every year. This spring we decided that we were going to try some strip till. So we bought a strip freshener, Yetter strip freshener, just for some tougher spots or tougher ground that needs to dry out when you get large rain events. We ended up not using it much. It's really hard to get a no-tiller to start tilling something again and making another pass. But we're just getting started and dabbling with a little bit of strip till in some tough ground that stays wet. It makes a beautiful strip to plant into, but we had some trouble in some low spots with the baskets plugging full of mud. Something we got to work out and maybe modify and change some things on the unit. So as far as fertilizer management, we we still put dry fertilizer on with the planter, which is weird because nobody does that. But we farm a lot of rented ground and small ground in a highly developable area that could be developed into houses next year. You never know. So we don't focus on building too much fertility in soil as broadcasting. We more feed the plant with the planter by putting fertilizer along the row. And we apply that three inches away from the row and about 3 inches deep. And then we come with a pop-up infurrow on the corn to help it get started. Here on our farm, we side dress our nitrogen all in June. We use a liquid applicator with a coulter and a knife. We knife it in. Only about 25% of our nitrogen needs are met with the planter, and that would be counting your soybean nitrogen credits. You can only get a little bit of nitrogen out of the DAP in our starter fertilizer that's put in with the dry fertilizer on the planter. Otherwise, all our nitrogen is put on mid-June, mid to late if it's late here, but it's usually mid-June. We'll knife in 32% liquid UAN or 28% UAN. And everything's put in subsurface, injected in the ground. We don't have to worry about getting a rain timely to get it in the ground. It's already in the ground. That's kind of why we went to that system. With spreading urea or super U or your encapsulated products, you're still trying to wait on a rain to get that product working. We knife it in and it goes to work right away. Don't have to worry about loss. It takes a little bit more time, but we can probably get by with less N applying it because it's injected in the ground. On our lighter textured soils, we can get in earlier, especially on bean stubble for planting dates. And the time savings when you go to no-till, you just show up with a planter and plant. You don't have to do a bunch of prep work, so it saves a lot of time. So this spring, early May, we had a short window, very, very short window. We were able to go and plant 100 acres in one day, and no-till, didn't have to prep anything ahead of time. Top of the soil's dry. Didn't have to worry about working it and letting it dry out. So we had like 5 inches of rain on this no-till field that we got planted early, and had very minimal washouts, and everything came up. We didn't have to do any tillage work to go fix anything or replant to get things to come up. So if that would have been a worked field, it would have been a disaster. And there was some high rolly, sort of erodible ground there. So with a no-till, it held everything in place. We got a group of farmers that get together and we kind of talk about things that work and don't work. And three of them guys are strip tillers and have been no-tillers in the past. And we kind of talk about things and we kind of come up with some ideas, and some things don't always work, but most of the time they always do. So I guess when you're no-tilling corn, you can have a fear that it's not going to come up right. Going to make it. Has everything been perfect every time? No. But you're also not making a tillage pass and spending money on fuel and tillage equipment, so it doesn't have to be perfect. For the most part, I have no fear of planting. I haven't had enough courage to plant corn on corn in corn stalks. We couldn't make that work one time. That's where we kind of got the strip till tool for. But there are challenges. Last year we had a really dry year. We're finding out that in the no-till soybeans that we probably had some chemical carryover from the corn last year that's stunted beans a little bit on their growth. So it took a little longer for them to come out of that, but it seems to be a widespread problem no matter what type of tillage program you're running. It just seems a little bit less in the tilled ground. So I don't have really any failures, and everything seems to work out pretty good. That's why we keep with it, but we keep tweaking things every year. If you are doing no-till or strip-till, I would recommend depth gauge scrapers on a planter is the number one thing you ever need. You need those because it can be really bad if the mud is sticking to the depth gauge. So my key advice to farmers that want to try no-till, strip-till, or any conservation program, even if it's cover crops, is work into it slow. Start slow. Do a little bit. You don't have to do your whole farm right away. You can just start slow and see how it goes. More than likely, you're going to be happy with it and you're going to expand every year. But I would just try a little. You don't have to do the whole farm right away, but after you get started, you might want to. You might not want to too. But start slow. Just give it a try.